Thank you for tuning in to another episode of WGC Fits. Today we are doing a little bit of a different video. We're going to have kind of a round table. I think everybody here knows everybody, but just in case, we'll start with Trent. Everybody say who you are walking left.
Trent Maxwell, PGA Golf Professional here at Windmill Golf Center. Don't forget to like us and subscribe.
I'm Scott Galady. I'm also one of the PGA professionals here.
AJ Rosati, I'm a fitter here, and I'm awesome.
And Alex Daniel, one of the fitters, and not as awesome as AJ.
It's facts.
Okay, so first question. Why is fitting for lie so important with irons and wedges?
Irons or wedges are clubs that you typically hit into greens, so dispersion and accuracy is at a premium. If a player has an incorrect lie angle, it can affect their interaction with the turf and definitely affect their accuracy.
I would agree with that. I mean, wedges probably more so than even irons as far as the lie goes, because you're hitting shorter shots. You want to make sure those are on line. And that's one part that gets overlooked quite a bit with fitting for people. Want to get fit for irons and drivers, but they don't think about wedges. And wedges are probably more important than anything else. I mean, you're going to use those clubs more so than you're going to use anything else in your bag.
I agree with that. Ground interaction is so overlooked when looking at wedges. And one of the main things I try to fit for is proper ground interaction, getting good trajectories going into the greens. That's how you stop the ball. So,
100% agree with everything. And the biggest thing that we also look at is swing plane. That's going to be a good indication of where we should go for lie angle. Sometimes if it's too upright, it could go left, depending on swing plane. But if it's too flat, it could go right as well.
All right, next one. With an average swing speed, is there a benefit to have a 5-wood over a 3-wood?
I think that's very important because it depends a little bit on delivery, but loft is always your friend, right? We have to be able to get the ball up in the air, and speed has a lot to do with that. And I honestly can't remember the last time I fit somebody into a standard 3-wood. Most of the time we're always playing with loft somewhere just to get the ball up in the air to achieve a launch condition that makes sense, because it's a gapping club still. It needs to fill a window,
Without a doubt, as AJ alluded to, I mean, loft is your friend, and with an average club speed, that is not adequate in order for the ball to get launched properly. So if it doesn't get launched and it's not spinning enough, then the ball's not going to carry. I've had a number of players that actually carry their 3-wood shorter than they carry a higher lofted fairway wood. So the stereotypical player that comes in and says, I need driver 3-wood, 5-wood, they hit a quote-unquote 3-wood, they hit a 5-wood, and then they hit the highest lofted fairway wood farther and more accurate and with more consistency than they do that quote-unquote 3-wood that they were hell-bent on getting fit for.
Kind of piggyback off this, with an average swing speed, is there a benefit to have a 7-wood over a hybrid?
I also think that there's a benefit that could be had there, again, depending on delivery, right?
Delivery is going to be the big thing.
It's huge because if you're a guy who kind of sweeps a little bit more, let's say, it might be a little bit more advantageous to have a higher lofted fairway wood versus a hybrid, because you still kind of have to kind of hit down on a hybrid to get it up on the face enough to create launch. It goes back to launch, how you deliver a club.
Certainly player dependent. It's having hit them both, because the speed isn't the big thing, it's the delivery that's the big thing. Some people are just, maybe a fairway wood's going to be friendlier than a hybrid, and vice versa. Some people in the fairway wood might be too long. So that's why you got to hit both of them and figure out what's best for the player.
Just figuring out the best end result for the player as well, what they're looking for. If someone wants a lower trajectory in, then they might be more suitable for a hybrid. But if they want to get the ball up in the air and land it softer, second shot into a green, higher lofted fairway is the key.
And honestly, just the visual appearance is going to be huge for a lot of players as well. Some people are going to be very uncomfortable with one club type compared to another. So,
I would say the funniest thing in all this is I've had way more people come in and say they hate hybrids, and they don't even know that higher lofted fairways are an option. So you give them one of those, and all of a sudden you have them hit a 9-wood, and they start giggling because they hit it higher than they've ever seen any ball they've ever hit in their life. And they're like, oh, okay.
And
so,
it's easier.
It's easier.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be work. I mean, golf's hard enough. So try to get some golf clubs that fit you so that you don't have to work as hard.
Okay, a common question we get is what's the difference, if there is any, between steel and graphite shafts?
There's certainly a difference. The differences have obviously changed. Initially, when graphite shafts came onto the scene a number of years ago, there was a stigma that it was typically for older players or players with lower club head speeds. Just from a construction standpoint, steel shafts are typically made of a solid piece of rolled good, whereas graphite shafts are made of millions of little filaments. But modern day shafts, there can be lightweight steel and there can be heavy steel, whether it's very flexible or very tight. Just like with graphite shafts, they can be very light, they can be very heavy. They can also be very whippy or flexible or extremely stiff. Obviously, with millions of little filaments, it's going to absorb any sort of vibration much more than a rolled good will. So if a player tends to have arthritis or hand knuckle joint pain in that area, graphite shafts might be easier on their body or on their elbows. So, I mean,
The other thing that I think is important to note when looking at this question is it's not always a, swing speed thing or anything like that, right? I fit plenty of guys who have tons of swing speed into graphite because they like the feel of it better, or maybe they have like bad elbow or something like that, right? One of the fastest guys here, one of the coaches here, he played graphite shafts for a long time, just because he was comfortable with them. It's just how it is. I load a shaft pretty hard, and I'm looking for a set of graphite irons that I like the feel of and can control a little bit because I have a lot of injuries, A lot of stuff goes into it.
Why does flex matter to my swing?
So that's a tough one because I can have a really lightweight stiff shaft and I can have a really heavyweight regular shaft. And that regular shaft is technically stiffer than the stiff shaft. So going through the process of hitting different things and trying to figure out what weight class works best for you, I'd work on it from that standpoint, not so much a regular stiff or an extra stiff or a senior flex or something like that. I'd work on it more on a weight basis first and foremost and go from there.
I was going to say, I think a better way to look at that would be try to identify weight before flex, because I think weight to a certain extent can affect the outcome more.
Because everyone's shafts, there's now, it's not 20, 30 years ago where there was only a couple shafts on the market. There are so many different shafts on the market now. And a regular flex in one, say a nip-on, might be a stiff flex in KBS, depending on what shafts you're looking at. So I would try to take the nomenclature out of the regular and the stiff side of things and again, work on more the torque values or the weight values or stuff like that. Again, have the player hit them and see. Some players can immediately tell a difference. I've had plus handicaps that couldn't tell a difference in shafts, and I've had 30 handicaps that could. It's going to be a player by player dependency. There's no one clear cut. I wish there was a clear cut answer. Is, oh yeah, you have to have this. You swing this, you need this. But usually not the case.
golf's a results-based game. So regardless of what the shaft is labeled as stiffness-wise, it's about the shot that's produced. And again, that's going to vary player to player. So don't get, as Trent said, don't get caught up in labels. That's where you have to lean on the fitter's knowledge of the different shaft manufacturers and their different profiles.
You look at someone like a Jim Furyk. I mean, he's shot under 60 a couple times, and he plays regular flex iron shafts. So does that mean he doesn't have any swing speed? No, he's got plenty of swing speed.
Just correct me if I'm wrong, not all manufacturers have the same standards of flex, right?
Correct.
There's not one quote-unquote standard that's industry-wide. That's like a size 10 in Nike is not a size 10 in Adidas is not a size 10 in Puma.
Or Footjoy.
Or Echo.
Or Echo.
Your Air Force One, bro.
Or Asics.
Yeah.
Or New Balance.
Or Olakais.
Okay.
Yeah.
Next.
Versace.
There you go.
Jesus.
Little Louis V action.
All right, next question is, does a shorter driver help improve contact but lose distance?
I know how Trent feels about these questions.
Yes.
Trent loves shorter drivers.
Yeah. We'll let AJ start, though. I mean, I can start, but we'll let AJ take this one.
Centerness of contact is the most important thing from a fitting perspective that we're working on, right? achieving centerness of contact lets us then, kind of from a fitting perspective, understand what's actually going on with the club and how it's affecting ball flight. Now, does shortening a driver make it easier to hit out of the middle? It can, not always, but it can, right? I play a shorter driver. I'm a fan of the shorter drivers in general, right? There's a lot of variables that go into that, though. It's not just shorten the driver and find center, I would say.
A shorter driver shaft typically allows the player to control it better, allows them to deliver more consistently, and it just produces a better result. The analogy I use a lot of times is if I'm on an operating table and the surgeon walks in with a scalpel versus a broadsword, I'm going to be a lot more comfortable with that smaller tool.
As far as going back to the length question on shaft length for driver, the average length the manufacturers sell to the public is 45.5 to 45.75. The average length on the PGA Tour is 44.5. So that fact right there shocks a lot of people. The guys on tour can hit it at 45.75, but they want consistency. They want centerness of contact. They want to be able to know exactly where that golf ball is going. So they want to give themselves the best chance. So why wouldn't the average player want to give themselves the best chance? So that's where length comes into play. I want someone, they can repeat it. If they can repeat it at 45.5, great. Then use 45.5 or 46. I've done 46, but I've also done 43 in a driver. Sergio Garcia, Ricky Fowler, those are a couple of guys those are two of the best drivers in the last 10, 15 years, and they both have 43.5 inch drivers. So the important thing is centerness of contact, whatever length that is, and just trying to figure out what that is. But when you make that driver shorter, there's also some concessions you got to make too, as far as weight and repositioning, stuff like that. Because just shortening it, you might make it really light, you might make it really stiff, you might do things that unintended benefits or unintended errors, consequences that happen with just shortening a driver.
And then the last thing that I would say there is a longer club has potential to let you swing faster. It's a longer lever, right? However, the loss of ball speed from a non-centered strike often is greatly outweighing that slight gain that you might get if you pick up, let's say, a mile-an-hour club speed, right? Because it's not going to be hugely drastically different going longer and picking up tons of club speed. That's another question that I get a lot. So kind of weigh it out. Try both. See what you work. Find center. That's what you got to do.
How do you guys at WGC determine the best shaft length?
Good lead-in.
Yeah, so obviously when I'm doing, are we talking irons?
Yeah.
Irons, yeah. So when I'm doing iron fitting, I like to show the player the ping, just like a shaft length chart, to kind of give them the baseline of where they should be. It's not always the case. Obviously, we're watching, goes back to center strike of the player, where they're catching it, if they're catching it heavy, if they're catching it thin. There's all sorts of things that go into checking the shaft length. Weight could be a factor. Something too light, too heavy. Goes back to swing. If they're, what I've seen just firsthand from being a baseball player is baseball players have a tendency to do early release. If I go something heavy, sometimes they struggle with that and they want to cast the club and they catch it heavy. If we lighten that up, shorten it a little bit, helps just clean up that ground contact.
Typically what we do in the fittings, we use a marker test where we draw a line on the golf balls. That transfers a line onto the club face at the moment of impact. So again, based on location of that mark, whether it's low on the face or high or toe side or heel, that provides some length data. And based on orientation of the mark, if the line's tilted towards the heel or towards the toe, that gives some lie angle information. That's not set in stone because, again, if a player tends to come hard out to in, it can alter the orientation of the line. But again, it boils down to that moment of impact. So anything we can do to get information regarding that club face ball connection is going to help give us length related information.
Mm-hmm. So a lot of it's going to have to do with posture as well, and comfort of the player. I mean, you look at the difference between Scotty and I mean, we're a little different size-wise in height, but I know his golf clubs are a lot longer than my golf clubs. So if you look at guys on the tour, I mean, they're not a whole lot of them are playing overlink golf clubs, even though there's a lot of tall guys out there. Usually tall guys also have longer arms. So it's not always, well, I'm tall, I need longer golf clubs. Not always. I mean, it can be, but it's quite honestly, of all the questions that I get on a day-to-day basis, that's probably the hardest one, because there's no set in stone answer. There's no by the book answer. It's trial and error, trying to figure out what's best for the player.
We always try to fit in the dynamic window, right? And when you're fitting in the dynamic window, we're looking at what's going on at impact, which is different than trying to just statically measure stuff. You know, a lot of variables go into it. So a lot of things go into trying to find center contact for the guy. Length is one of them.
Proof's in the pudding.
And last question is, why get fit here at Windmill Golf Center over another franchised company?
Because you get to see Scotty.
Scott.
And AJ.
Okay, I'm Austin and Scott, so.
Okay, why is this place different than any other fitting franchise?
Because we have Scott.
Nice part about our facility is the live ball flight aspect. There's no nets, screens, simulator, so if you hit great shots, you're going to see the great shots. If you hit bad shots, you're going to see the bad shots. Obviously, it's going to play out to a real-world scenario when you're on the golf course.
Our goal isn't to sell clubs to every person that comes in for a fitting. And we're not salespeople. You know, we're purchasing consultants. Our job is to make sure that if people spend money on something, it's because they see a tangible improvement. They see a benefit, whether it's in performance and technology and ultimately enjoyment. Again, it's not a sales job.
No, agreed.
I agree with that.
I would say, you know, I like to say it with customers that come in. I mean, our job is to try to give you a better chance. We're not here to, again, sell you something. We want to make sure it's better, and we want you to see that it's better, and we want to send you the results and make sure you have the reports and stuff like that. A lot of other places might not do all those things. We want to physically know that it's better. We don't, again, we're not in the sales business.
What I always tell people is, like, I'm not here to sell you a golf club. I'm not here to, you know, even tell you what to buy, let's say. I'm here to, you know, help you try to play better on your next round of golf, right? Get a better chance, like you said. Answer questions, provide insight if asked, right? Just kind of make sure you're out there having fun and better chance at getting that pure one next time, you know?
And one of the big questions we have as far as, you know, what do you play? I might play X brand, and Scotty plays a different brand, and Alex and AJ, they play different brands. It's irregardless of what we play. We're not the ones hitting the golf ball for you. So you got to make sure that you find something that's comfortable. And that's what we try to sell. We try to be as unbiased as we possibly can, because ultimately it's your golf clubs, not our golf clubs. So we're trying to make sure that you're content with that, whether it's a price point or a certain look or a certain feel or whatever it may be. Maybe you are, you know, a huge Callaway fan or a huge Cobra fan or a Ping fan or a Titleist fan, and that's really what you want. Okay, that's fine. Let's make sure it fits you though, and maybe let's try some other things just to make sure there isn't anything that's really better. But yeah, I mean, we want you to be happy with the purchase.
It's your swing. It's definitely not Scott's swing, you know?
I'm creative. What can I say?
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of WGC Fits. Hopefully you guys got some insight in terms of kind of us and how we think about stuff. Come see us next time you're interested in some golf equipment or a good laugh. We'll see you.